Hello, friends! The invention of gunpowder in the 13th and 14th centuries gave birth to the first artillery, but in the 15th century, an even more terrifying force appeared on the battlefield: infantry with handheld firearms, specifically the matchlock arquebus. Even the relatively weak early arquebuses instantly changed the course of history. For 1,000 years, cavalry, empowered by the invention of the stirrup, had dominated the battlefield. From the nimble, bow-wielding Mongol horse archers to the heavily armored European knights, mounted warriors ruled the art of war. But now, they found themselves helpless against infantry armed with arquebuses, and later, muskets. The round lead ball, roughly the size of a pigeon egg, packed massive energy in joules. It didn't just wound like an arrow, it killed. A knight might survive a dozen arrows, but a single musket ball could bring down both horse and rider. Cavalry had one chance left: catch the musketeers while they were reloading. But even that advantage was lost when pikemen were introduced, standing guard with long spears to protect their comrades during the vulnerable moments of reloading. Then, in the late 17th century, another military revolution reshaped warfare: the invention of the socket bayonet. A simple idea, a metal tube that allowed a blade to be mounted on the barrel of a musket. Now, every musketeer also had a short spear at their disposal. Pikemen were no longer needed, effectively doubling the number of shooters in the ranks. This led to yet another revolutionary innovation: the line infantry tactic. Soldiers formed into lines 3 ranks deep, delivering coordinated volleys that swept away everything in their path. In my view, the finest army of the 18th and 19th centuries was the British. Forged from the bravery of Scots, the fiery spirit of the Irish, and the steadfastness of the English, this military machine had the highest musket volley rates in Europe. Strict discipline, relentless drill, and a solid core of soldiers and officers made the British Army tactically unbeatable. Strategic setbacks did occur, take the war with the American colonies, for example, but on the battlefield, tactically, the British forces were outstanding. Even the great Napoleon Bonaparte couldn't break through the iron lines of British infantry. One of the key elements of their success was the Brown Bess musket, the first truly standardized military firearm in the world. Every musket had the same lock, flint, caliber, and length. This gave British soldiers a critical advantage. The Brown Bess was a finely made weapon, meticulously designed. Each musket was individually inspected and tested by a military commission for quality, something unheard of in other nations. And let's remember, muskets were responsible for up to 80% of all battlefield casualties in that era. Artillery accounted for 18%, while bayonets and sabers combined made up only about 2%. In 18th and early 19th century battles, the very first musket volley would often fill the battlefield with thick white smoke. Black powder burned poorly, leaving soldiers able to see only the bright-colored uniforms of their comrades. Victory often went to the side that could fire faster and more consistently than the enemy, delivering volleys into the fog where they expected the enemy to be. And because the British fired faster than anyone else, their enemies often resorted to desperate bayonet charges just to avoid being annihilated by the relentless fire of the Brown Bess. That's when the time for the bayonet came. In the entire history of the British Army, there are no recorded cases of retreat or panic during a bayonet engagement. They fought with ferocity, whether at the farmhouse of Hougoumont during Waterloo, on the banks of the Alma River in the Crimean War, across the rocky cliffs of Gallipoli, or in the trenches of the Somme during World War I. Now let's talk about the bayonet technique itself. British soldiers were trained in 2 main types of bayonet thrusts. The first was a straight lunge to the enemy's chest during the initial approach. The second was a downward stab to the gut in close combat, driving the butt of the musket downward for extra force. But make no mistake, bayonet fighting was always chaos. It was unpredictable, brutal, and bloody. That's why British officers had to keep a cool head, restraining the fiery sons of England, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, and later Australia, from falling into bayonet madness. Instead, they were trained to channel their aggression through discipline, formation, and the lethal precision of the British Empire's finest weaponry. So, that's all for today, friends. Thanks for watching.